Hello everyone, it's Theme Park Avenue, I'm Eric. What is your favorite theme park or amusement park chain? Is it Cedar Fair, Universal, Disney? Well, I think in the future, quite a few of you who've not said it already might say SeaWorld Parks and Entertainment. Looking at these SeaWorld and Busch Gardens parks, they have recently changed quite a bit, and I anticipate more change in the future that will be rapid growth for their quality and to an extent their attendance. So I think these parks in the future could become the best overall chain in the US. Let's get into this topic right now. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel so you know when new theme park content comes out. And now let's get into this. Looking at recently, SeaWorld was on a roll with roller coasters, based on the fact that the animals that were once iconic are not really their main claim to fame anymore. They're now focused on adding big new attractions that will interest people. In 2020, SeaWorld San Antonio got Texas Stingray, which is a highly regarded GCI wooden coaster. And there are 4 other roller coasters that were going to come in 2020, but they ended up being pushed back due to COVID. And they were all pretty major. We had Emperor at SeaWorld San Diego, a solid dive coaster, Icebreaker at SeaWorld Orlando, which is a pretty fun premier rides launch coaster from what I hear, and certainly among the better major rides in the park. Pantheon at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, considered one of the best roller coasters in the United States with its launches and its unique elements. And of course, Iron Gwazi at Busch Gardens Tampa, which for me is the best roller coaster and amusement park ride in the world. So that's a pretty major addition. And there were 4 others in a similar time frame, so clearly SeaWorld was really going all in that time. Beyond that, we have a few things on the way. There are smaller additions, but there's one in all of these 5 major parks. Arctic Rescue, the family launch coaster, Catapult Falls, the fascinating new log flume, DarKoaster, the indoor theme launch coaster, Serengeti Flyer, a scream and swing to help improve the themed thrill areas of Busch Gardens Tampa, and of course Pipeline, a somewhat innovative B&M surf coaster that I think could very much dictate the future of a whole manufacturer. So this pattern of constantly adding new stuff to all of the 5 main parks seems similar to Universal's 6 major parks. Just look at what Universal's done. So between Universal Studios Hollywood, Islands of Adventure, and all of the others, they have changed quite a bit in just the last few years. In just 2021 and 2022, we saw Secret Life of Pets Off the Leash at Universal Studios Hollywood, one of the most highly regarded dark rides of recent memory. 2022 also gave us Super Nintendo World at Universal Studios Japan, one of the best themed areas in any park. Velocicoaster is one of the most highly regarded roller coasters, and it's any park that doesn't typically have crazy, highly regarded thrill rides. Good ones for sure, but to be this good is a pretty major step in a different direction. Revenge of the Mummy was renovated over at Universal Studios Florida, and all of Universal Studios Beijing, including possibly the best ride on the planet, Jurassic World Adventure, came out in 2022. Not to mention in 2025 we'll be getting Epic Universe, so work has been done on that. There is so much being done with Universal parks, and it seems SeaWorld is following in these footsteps. And given that Universal is probably the most acclaimed theme park chain, I think Busch Gardens and SeaWorld parks are going to be on their way to somewhat match this, and maybe in the farther future, dethrone. But what does this mean for the near future of SeaWorld parks? Well, let's discuss one thing that I think is very likely, and that is the continuation of these major new attractions in 2-year intervals. Looking at rumors of a Giga Coaster for Busch Gardens parks or SeaWorld Orlando, these look more likely than ever, based on the fact that there is so much work being done in every park. I'll say looking at other chains, they seem to focus more on theming when they used to be thrill-based. For example, we've seen Tumbelia at King's Dominion, Jolly Rancher Remix at Hershey Park, and Sidewinder Safari at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. These all have themed queues, and even areas such as the Boardwalk at Cedar Point or Adventureport at Kings Island are not focused on adding crazy new rides that's going to attract people. It's just making the park a little more pleasant and themed. Fortunately, SeaWorld does not have to do this, because they already have beautiful parks, great aesthetic, themed areas, wonderful atmosphere, and for the most part, the queues are already nice looking and the rides have great appearances. Instead, they can focus on bringing in major new rides and attractions that will pique interest outside of just being quote-unquote new. They might break records, and actually interesting records on like tallest roller coaster by 1 foot. Granted, they still did that, but that's kind of beside the point. But they'll be adding things that will interest people like, oh wow, Iron Gwazi. It's a new hybrid coaster. It's the tallest, yes, but more importantly, for those who don't like the records as much, it has fascinating inversions, a crazy pace, and many are now calling it the best roller coaster in the world. So of course, if SeaWorld keeps on this track, there's going to be so much for people to enjoy. I think they'll stay on this path based on the fact that CEO Mark Swanson has been part of SeaWorld for a long time, and if there's an issue of backing down the way Six Flags did, not making good stuff but still raising prices, something is clearly going wrong, and I just don't think SeaWorld would fall into that trap. Even if new leadership takes over for Swanson, I feel the success of Pantheon, Iron Gwazi, and other rides is enough to warrant a focus on this type of thing. So if more great new rides are added to complement the excellent animal attractions and theming, I imagine in the future we will see a focus on operations. The worst thing about SeaWorld parks in general. Improving this would help quite a bit. Speaking as somebody who goes to Busch Gardens Tampa pretty often, the poor dispatches and frequent breakdowns on Cheetah Hunt, Cobra's Curse, and to an extent the new Iron Gwazi, along with Falcon's Fury issues that hopefully will change, but still kind of existed even before the whole Icon Park incident, these are in need of fixing. I'm sure other SeaWorld parks have some similar issues to some extent. And seeing as Universal is the park that I think SeaWorld is trying to reach, and they have great operations, I feel SeaWorld is going to be trying to match this regard because it's an important part of the guest experience. Honing this, I think by 2026, we could see Islands of Adventure level dispatches and reliability on pretty much every major ride. There'd be some issues of course, but that's a thing at Islands of Adventure too. Sometimes there are complications. Things close sometimes, Haggards is very complicated, and similarly, Busch Gardens has lesser budget to go off of and similar for all SeaWorld parks. So they might not be able to handle it the same way Islands does now, but I think this will be focused on more in the future and will be very helpful for the park as a whole. And all the SeaWorld parks can kind of do the same thing, and they also might start filling certain gaps in their lineups that make for well-rounded experiences the way Islands of Adventure has provided. Looking at how Universal parks have the great thrilling roller coasters, the immersive dark rides, the more basic flat rides, and tons for both families and thrill seekers. I think the SeaWorld parks will try to do this for their individual parks as well. We can expect flat rides coming to Busch Gardens Tampa, such as the Scream and Swing, and especially to SeaWorld San Diego. We might see some more family dark rides or roller coasters coming to SeaWorld Orlando and San Antonio. And in general, the parks are just going to try to strike that balance, but they'll have a bigger focus on roller coasters, since not only do they already do that, but they are great at it. The SeaWorld parks have proven that making thrilling roller coasters and combining that with the guest experience of being in an immersive ocean or European or jungle-like landscape, I think they are able to provide that balance. And they're going to continue on the roller coaster path because they've tried dark rides before, it hasn't worked too well, and while they might try some more, I imagine for the most part it's definitely going to be a bigger focus on what they already know how to do, but still providing some unique stuff for guests, and it's gonna go pretty well. Looking at the path Busch Gardens Tampa's on right now, it seems it already has better theming than the vast majority of Cedar Fair and Six Flags parks, superior roller coasters to many of those, especially compared to Disney and Universal as well, and it strikes that thrill and theming balance better than all of the parks outside of some Universal and Hershend. That balance is the most important thing I'm really trying to stress here, because while some say coaster enthusiasts are a very small part of park visitors, and therefore somewhat insignificant to new additions, it should be noted, the majority of chains in the US focus on unthemed rides and parks. The Disney parks seem to be an exception. I'd argue the roller coaster audience is just as important as that family audience to appeal to. Maybe not necessarily for making money on the individual visit, but for bringing in more guests who are going to recommend it to more people, it is very important to appeal to that audience as well. And since the SeaWorld parks already kind of do work with that audience, but not quite as much as, say, Cedar Point. I think they're going to try to hone that because they know how to. They don't quite know how to make a Rise of the Resistance or Jurassic World Adventure, but they know how to make some really great roller coasters and combine that with some good theming. And as they continue to add so many good things, and I can see them working around a lot of new stuff, making some more family launch coasters, bringing in gigas, and doing things you never expect SeaWorld to do. I think Busch Gardens Tampa, Busch Gardens Williamsburg, and SeaWorld Orlando will consistently be considered some of the best theme parks in the US, and SeaWorld San Diego and San Antonio will be competing with the majority of Six Flags and Cedar Fair parks. And therefore, in the future, I think SeaWorld might overtake every other chain as the best theme park chain, primarily in the United States, but possibly in the entire world. Assuming they can stay on this path, I think they will not be losing their way, and therefore, they will be gaining so much praise from the entire roller coaster and theme park community in general. Is this video correct? Come back in a few years and we'll find out. Thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed this video. Comment down below your thoughts on SeaWorld and if they're going to be improving like this. Subscribe for more content. I'll see you next time.